Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Eric Johansson, a teacher with LSAT Demon, and joining me this week, thrilled to have one of the other excellent teachers at LSAT Demon, Kaley, who you might know from the Lunch Hour LR. Is that the main class that you're teaching these days, Kaley? Or tell me, what all is it that you're doing at the Demon right now?
Yeah, so right now I teach lunch break LR every day at noon Eastern, every weekday that is. And then also on Wednesdays, I teach the RC Foundations class at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Nice. So you're getting in the mix of both LR and RC. Did you love both of those as you were taking the test, or did you have to, you're shaking your head? So no, it sounds like you had to make peace with at least one of those.
RC was like my nemesis. I took it back when logic games were still a thing, loved logic games. LR was pretty good, just like a plug and chug thing. RC, I would just have rather died than do an RC passage. So that was a huge hurdle to get over for sure.
I'm sure that some of our listeners relate to that and might even be relieved to hear that those of us who are now teaching the LSAT, you're teaching RC classes now, so obviously you figured it out to some extent. Was there a point at which it turned the corner, like you were afraid to, or you just did not want to do RC passages? Did you just learn to tolerate it, or did you actually learn to like it?
So yeah, I actually learned to really like it. I also do private tutoring here with the Demon, and I love to share this story with my students. I I had taken the LSAT, got a 166, the next time got a 167, and I was so frustrated. And so then I sat down for an hour and a half of tutoring, individual tutoring, just did one RC passage, and my mind was blown how I could actually understand RC and just take it slowly. And I heard, oh, hey, all the answers are in the passage. And that was just like my world was completely changed. So after that, just hour and a half of tutoring, then I obviously completely changed my RC tactic. And the next time I took the test, I got a 174. So that's what made the biggest difference, was finally conquering RC and and just honestly having the discipline to implement the tactics that I was being taught.
And I'm sure that you get some satisfaction from seeing that same kind of light bulb moment with your tutoring students
That's what
nowadays.
I love about teaching and tutoring, is finally when you see somebody have, like you said, that light bulb moment. It's like, yes, because I know how good that felt when I was in the
Yeah.
same position. So
Yeah. The funnest response you can get is when a student says, no, it can't be that easy. It can't be that obvious, the correct answer. It's just, that's too this is supposed to be a level 5 question. It can't be that simple.
right. That's especially what I find for the students who are performing at, really high scores already, or their PTs are pretty high. They're like, I just can't do these level 1 questions. They're too hard for me. And I'm like, what's too hard about them? They're so easy. Okay, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, good problem to have for sure. All right, well, maybe we can get into some more RC specifics in a bit, but why don't we backtrack to the beginning of your LSAT journey? You mentioned that your first official test was a 166, I think. Was that shortly after a diagnostic, or do you remember where you started cold on the LSAT?
Yeah, I started a diagnostic of 151 first time I took it. I remember the first time I took it, LR, I had never seen anything like it. And so I was
Hmm.
like, what is this? I had no idea what the LSAT was like. I just took a diagnostic test, did a 151, and then studied for a little bit and took the official test.
How long about was it between your cold diagnostic and your first official test?
I gave myself a month to study, which is
Okay.
not something I ever advise anybody doing.
Well,
I had that semester in school, I was in the middle of my senior year, and I had just finished my thesis and was like, okay, now I have time during the summer to study. And so I gave myself all of May to study and took the test in June and thought that I was going to just like score super well with hardly any studying.
yeah, it sounds like you maybe didn't understand or underestimated what you were getting yourself into.
Yep. I think that's something that a lot of people taking the LSAT do. I mean, some people just know exactly what they're in for, but I'm a first generation law student. I don't hardly know any attorneys. Like, it's just I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And a lot of us, like, if you're preparing to go to law school, you probably do pretty well with things that are school related. You study for an exam and you do well on the exam. And so then taking the LSAT and studying really hard for it and then not hitting that score that I wanted was just this, like, my world was turned upside down. I was like, what's going on? Everything as I knew it was kind of up in the air. And so it was a lot of figuring out, okay, I just got humbled by the LSAT. What am I going to do now? And that's when I found LSAT Demon, actually.
So when you found LSAT Demon, was that a turnaround from feeling discouraged to feeling like you actually could see the path forward?
100%. I think that's a great way to say it. I like you said, I was super discouraged. And then I came to LSAT Demon, and the company that I was with before, I mean, I had just been doing just mostly self-study and doing all these convoluted, like really focusing on question types and reading the question before reading the actual passage. And so then got to LSAT Demon, and it was like, hey, here's the 3-step process, do it and you'll be good to go. Blew my mind and worked really well for me to figure out that I didn't need to do all these unnecessary steps that were going to make me even more confused. Being able to really focus on the content and pick apart those arguments just made the most logical sense. I was like, why doesn't everybody teach this way? It was fabulous.
So you go from a 166, 167, then a 174, and was that your final? You settled on 174. Said, that's pretty good score. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I decided I think that's going to be enough. I was kind of exhausted after having taken the LSAT so many times. I took it 4 times. So the first time was at 159, and then 166, 167, finally 174, and I was like, that's good enough. I'm done. And decided.
Were you tempted to say good enough earlier? Like after, I'm sure there was some discouragement after maybe between a 166 and a 167. You only see 1 point of improvement. Did any part of you say, hey, maybe this is what I've got? Maybe I have to just call it good enough here?
Definitely. For a long time, my goal score was a 165. And so I got my 159 and was like, okay, I'm going to try just a little bit harder. And then in between that time, I became acquainted with a friend who goes to Harvard Law. And he was like, Kaley, you can do a lot better than this, And I was like, wait a second, I can. And it was really nice to hear somebody have that confidence in me. And then by the time I got my 166 and 167, I was like, oh no. And at that point, I was just kind of like out to get the LSAT. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I have a goal. I'm going to reach it and do whatever it takes to especially break that 170 barrier. I think that's kind of what everybody that's the elusive, 170. But more so it just kind of was like, I finally had it instilled in me that I could do better, and I accepted that and just really pushed myself until I got there.
I'm so glad you had that friend who said that, because I think that's true of the best teachers, and something that I strive to do as a teacher, which is tell students they can do better. Obviously, to be a teacher, you need to know the material, you need to be able to teach that, but simply being a person who believes that someone can do better and tell them, no, you are capable of more than you think. It's such a powerful thing. Especially, it seems like on this test where, I mean, come on, the difference between Kaley with a 167 and a 174, you're just in a completely different ballgame now.
Absolutely. It is, I will forever be so grateful that I became acquainted with that friend, because my whole trajectory of my life is going to be different. My goals are completely different. And so, yeah, to have somebody who pushes you is really, really nice. It's not always comfortable, and you're like, oh, why are you doing this? Just let me be comfortable with my 166. But it's really nice. Then when you finally get there, you're like, oh, this is worth it.
Did you have any study buddies?
I didn't actually. I just did it solo.
Yeah, me too, pretty much. Besides going to classes every once in a while. I know that some people work really well with study buddies. They can be great. Other people are used to studying on their own. So yeah, whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Were you doing live classes at all with the Demon? Were you mostly just studying on your own, combination of drilling and time practice?
I did live, and I Loved it. And that's why it's so funny to be a teacher now, because I'm like, I idolized these people when I was taking the test. And so it's kind of fun to have you guys as coworkers now. But yeah, no, live made the biggest difference to see how the different teachers went about, and the process was the same for everybody, but everybody taught it a little bit differently. So it was nice to get different levels of exposure from all those different classes. I loved live. I think it is one, the best bang for your buck for LSAT studying in general, but also just like that interaction with the teachers and the students just really, really helped propel my score and helped give me confidence that, yeah, I could do this.
Yeah. And now you've got your own live classes, like you mentioned. Talk to me a little bit about your RC class and what you teach or what the format of that class is.
Yeah, so a lot of it, the principles that I teach, so we go week by week. It's a 5-week class, and each week we teach different principles of RC. So the first week talks about just active reading and how to do that. And the last week talks about how to do comparative passages, using all those skills we talked about the previous weeks to kind of culminate together. And it is so fun for me to teach. Like I said, I had that, I finally got over the hump with RC, and now it's actually my favorite. And I love teaching students how to do what I learned how to do, because again, I know how satisfying that can be and how manageable RC is if you learn how to do it the right way. Because before it was just this mountain that I could not climb, but then you learn that it's just about how well you can read the passage, and it becomes so much easier. So that's what I really focus on in my class, is just making it as easy as possible. A lot of people make the LSAT so much harder than it needs to be. Let's just read the stuff they give us, understand it, and then we can answer the questions. That's all it is.
Yeah, like you said, what you unlocked in that 90-minute tutoring session that you had, realizing, hey, it's all in the passage. The answers are just there in the passage. Absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned that the first week in that 6-week cycle is on active reading. Sounds like a great place to start. It also, you might accuse that of being kind of a buzzword. Okay, active reading. Cool, let's do it. Let's read actively. Can you give me maybe 1 or 2 little snippets about what it means or what it looks like to actually be an active reader?
Yeah, active reading is, of course, being able to dissect the passage and understand every sentence. But what I figured out was a total game changer for me was making and finding relationships within the passage. The biggest thing that I find students struggle with in RC, and myself included when I was taking it, was you get to the 4th paragraph and I have no idea what the first paragraph said anymore. I've completely forgotten everything because I'm so focused on trying to figure out that 4th paragraph. And so
I reference Gandalf a lot in the Mines of Moria. I have no memory of this place.
100%,
Yeah.
especially with comparative passages. It was like, great, I've just read passage B. Now, what did passage A say again? I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so that making those references of, oh, hey, I have a line in the 4th paragraph that I know refers to something that was talked about in the 1st paragraph, that, oh, this is building off that idea, or, hey, this author is finally explaining this point that they made. Making those references throughout really helps you to understand the passage as a whole and understand the flow of the passage, which from that comes understanding the main point and things like that.
Yeah. I love what you said when you said, oh, the author is finally explaining this thing that they said. I really like that, because there's some attitude kind of in that statement. Like, you were being really demanding of the author. It's like, all right, you said this, and then you never explained yourself. So I'm not just going to accept that you know what you're talking about. I'm going to demand that you actually explain it. I think that can be a big shift for people on RC, is realizing that you can be kind of a jerk a little bit. You can put that kind of demanding asshole lawyer hat on and say, no, be better. Explain this better. I like that.
That I feel like that's the active part of active reading, is don't just be a passive reader. Don't just take the information as it comes to you. That's what I used to do. And clearly that's not the best tactic. And so really figure out how to question that author. And like you said, hey, you have some explaining to do. Do that. That's a huge part of active reading.
Yeah. Turning to LR for a moment, you mentioned that LR was completely foreign to you when you first got started. Just not used to doing anything like that. But it sounds like you probably started having fun with it pretty quickly and saw that, oh, it's just some word puzzles that we get to play. Were there any big challenges that you remember, like it really took a while to overcome on LR? I don't know if it's a particular question type or a concept. Like, can you remember what the biggest lessons learned on LR were?
The biggest one that honestly I still struggled with until I started working at LSAT Demon was really identifying those sufficient and necessary concepts and the conditions. That is like hallmark of the LSAT. You got to figure that out. And I could do it well enough for the test, but it just took me a while. And so now I'm like efficient and can actually do it. But that was one of the biggest hurdles. I think even before that though, was just figuring out what's the conclusion. Because sometimes it can be really hard to figure out what is this author arguing. And then sometimes there's, questions where there is no conclusion. And so that was really tricky for me, being able to identify the difference and really figure out what's this author trying to prove. And then as soon as I did that, that's when I started really liking LR.
Okay, so how do you find the conclusion? Because it's not just the sentence with therefore at the beginning, right?
Yep. Students all the time are like, but there's a trigger word here. This is a conclusion. I'm like, no, it's not, sure. Sometimes it works out that way and that's really nice, but why don't we just eliminate us searching for a particular word? And instead, what I like to do is I'm paying attention to the flow of the argument. What's the author presenting as evidence and where is that evidence leading me? And so just kind of really understanding this is what the author's presenting as facts, and here's what they're trying to claim based off of the facts. That's what gets me to the conclusion.
Yeah. Well, Kaley, you've got your 174 in hand. You are out there ready to rock the law school application world. What's next for you? Or you've got applications in for this fall, or is there any schools that you're really excited for?
Yeah, so I, like you said, I got my applications in. I'm have a couple left to finish this week, but they're in for the most part. It's a good feeling, relieving, but it's also nerve-wracking because now it's completely out of my hands. As far as, schools that I'd like to go to, I'd love to be on the East Coast. I live in Arizona and I love Arizona, but I also love the East Coast, so I really want to go there for school.
Trade that 115-degree summer for a 98-degree summer with humidity.
Yeah, that's what I don't love so much about it is the humidity. I also don't love the snow, as you might imagine. So
Sure.
That'll be something to deal with once I get there.
You'll be in the library the whole time anyways. So
Right.
there'll be heating, and they don't let the snow inside the library most of the time.
Most of the time, right.
From what I've heard. Okay, cool. Can I ask you what your interest in law is? Do you have a ideal lawyer job?
Hopefully, I will get to go into patent law or something IP related. My undergrad degree is biology. I love science. And so I would love to be able to help people protect what they create. Getting to see all the different inventions is just something I'm super interested in.
Nice. Does that mean that you rock the natural science passages in RC?
See, those were the ones I never had a problem with. Unless they were astronomy, that's like the one area of science I didn't study. And for some reason, the LSAT loves astronomy. I'm like, what is this? But yeah, for the most part, natural science was good.
Yeah. Were humanities passages, were those the ones that you're like, roll your eyes and, oh, get over yourself, you darn poets. Nobody cares.
Right. Or like the 16th century paintings. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't spend my time in art museums, people. Like I go to the Natural History Museum. So it was a good day when I found out that the way I was reading the science passages, I could also read the humanities passages. That was a good day.
Interesting. Yeah, it all comes down to the same skills and looking for what the author's main point is. Yeah. It is funny just how people have their different blind spots or their different preferences. Some people hate the natural sciences passages. Some people hate the humanities passages. That seems to be like one of the big schisms in LSAT students is, are you more of a humanities passage person? Or are you more of a natural science passage person?
Totally. And that's something that I also focus on in my RC classes. All right. I don't care which passages you have a more natural inclination towards. We're just going to treat them all the same. It's no big deal. These, topics that you think are insurmountable, we're going to figure it out and dissect it.
Yeah, and that is a super positive mindset, just to say, hey, I don't care what it is. If you tell me the truth, if you give me the information, I'm going to learn it one way or another. So it doesn't matter whether I care about the subject.
Totally.
Cool. Well, thanks, Kaley. This has been great. Good to catch up and nerd out about the LSAT a little bit. Wish you all the best of luck with your applications. Any final words of wisdom for your students and for listeners before we end this?
Believe in your goals. Definitely set your sights high and don't stop until you get there. You're going to have to sacrifice some things for the LSAT. Your social life might go out the window, but it pays off. And if you stick to your goals, you can surely get there.
Yeah, friends can happen later.
Right.
No. You can maintain friendships with the LSAT. That's fine, but totally. Thanks, Kaley. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.